I now call on the clerk of the council to read aloud the text of the proclamation.
Whereas it has pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George. We, therefore, the Lords spiritual and temporal of this realm, and members of the House of Commons, together with other members of Her late Majesty's Privy Council, and representatives of the realms and territories, aldermen and citizens of London and others, do now hereby, with one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith, to whom we do acknowledge all faith and obedience with humble affection, beseeching God, by whom kings and queens do reign, to bless his majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. God save the King!
God save the King!
I now invite those on the platform to sign the proclamation.
All right, if you're still watching, you're still with us on Arise News. We are at St. James Palace, London, for the Ascension ceremony for King Charles III. A proclamation has been read affirming the new king's status. And of course, what we are watching right now is a process of signing by members of the royal family and other people of notable standing in that aspect as well. The occasion is witnessed by new Prime Minister Liz Truss, some members of her cabinet, and of course some MPs as well, looking on and giving legitimacy to this all-important occasion.
Indeed, a very auspicious occasion in the annals of the UK. Of course, King Charles III will be the oldest monarch to take the throne in a lineage that dates back 1,000 years. Of course, he will now become the King of the UK and 14 other realms, and in a wait of more than 70 years, the longest by any year here in the British history.
And of course, for 70 years, of which the late Elizabeth held a reign as a Queen of England, has had the indication that Charles has had a very long time of training for this very moment to come into fruition. And of course, we've seen members of the British public also welcoming this transfer of power with so much glitz, glamour, and of course positive expectations. And while still in mourning, but of course with expectations for the future as well.
Drafts of 8 orders of council. 1. Ordering the proclamation to be printed and published in specialist supplements in the London, Edinburgh and Belfast Gazettes. 2. Directing the Lord Chancellor to affix the Great Seal to the proclamation proclaiming His Majesty King Charles III. 3. Directing the King's, heralds and pursuivants of arms to attend at the Court of St. James to proclaim His Majesty King Charles III. 4. Directing the Lord Mayor, the Court of Aldermen and Commons of London to attend at the Royal Exchange to proclaim His Majesty King Charles III. 5. Directing His Majesty's Secretary of State for Defence to give directions for the firing of guns at Hyde Park as soon as His Majesty is proclaimed. 6. Directing the Constable of His Majesty's Tower of London to give directions for the firing of guns at the Tower of London as soon as His Majesty is proclaimed. 7. Directing His Majesty's Secretary of State for Scotland to cause the proclamation for proclaiming His Majesty King Charles III to be published in Scotland. 8. Directing the Clerk of the Council to issue circular letters for causing His Majesty King Charles III to be proclaimed are hereby approved, and that concludes the business for this part of the Council. I now invite the deputation party to accompany me to wait on the King in the Council chamber. Ladies and gentlemen, I now invite the High Commissioners and Acting High Commissioners for the Realms to depart, and please do sign the proclamation which is laid out in the lower corridor as you depart. Come by this way. Thank you. The City Civic Party, I know also have other business, so we'll need to depart at this point. I also invite any non-privy councillors to depart from the doors at the rear via the matted hall, signing the proclamation in the lower corridor.
So proclamations features an affirmation process been initiated, and of course quite a lot of former prime ministers, as we can see here, also in attendance. Boris Johnson, John Major, quite a number of notable personalities as well. Proclamations, letters will be sent to regions, the UK, as mentioned by the initiators. And of course, we are waiting on the emergence of the new King, Charles III.
And we will try and accommodate as many people in the throne room and the entree room as possible. Marshal and Lord Captain.
As you mentioned earlier, this is pretty much a history in the making for many Britons.
Indeed.
There are many that, of course, in the entire lifespan knew just the Queen, Elizabeth II, and now get to witness this very auspicious occasion in the history of the United Kingdom. So, of course, very exciting times, but of course under what we would possibly call sad,
Somber.
a very somber mood, exactly.
And of course, a little bit of information here. The former Prince Charles, who is now the King of the UK, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland, he will be addressed as His Majesty. His wife Camilla is now Queen Consort. I think we need to be careful with that. While the King's heir apparent, Prince William, who was Duke of Cambridge, becomes Duke of Cornwall and Cambridge, and also Prince of Wales. So quite a lot of activities there. It's not just the King's accession, but also a notification of the titles, which have been referenced here, and of course to those individuals concerned.
Yes, very
Queen
significant
Elizabeth's
changes
death,
happening there.
it has been described as a great loss to the entire world, and to a large extent, it connotes her legacy, as a messenger of peace, as someone who believes in mending fences, and of course, there are issues around the world which he has, in her nominal ways, tried to intercede and, of course, find solutions to. Not minding the fact that there have been periods of upheavals as well, even within the royal family. But her carriage, to a large extent, has been quite resolute and sustaining. And you tend to wonder, 70 years of doing that takes a lot of dedication.
Absolutely.
In getting this done. And quite admirable by those who have observed for some time how she's been able to cope doing that. And it'll be interesting to know that what's the Commonwealth without the Queen? She has also been a beacon of reference for that group. And like we said, Prince Charles III has his work cut out for him, no doubt at this rate.
Absolutely it does. And of course, in many ways, this speaks to how overwhelmingly popular, to her overwhelming popularity, and the sort of reverence around the British monarchy, not just her, almost being able to preserve this cultural, almost an institution, you would call it, but that so many people buy into and live by the ideals of it in so many ways. So a very profound life in many ways. One could put it that way.
So the dignitaries are being led to a room, as we can see, and we're also waiting for the emergence within the chamber, of which we're looking at right now. And I can see a throne, of which he'll probably be dressed in the royal regalia for such occasions. And of course, it will be, the final affirmation of his accession as King Charles III, eagerly being awaited by all. And you can see Theresa May, John Major, and a host of other former prime ministers, and Keir Starmer, the Labour opposition leader, also in attendance, and quite a number of people of important status as well. And we're seeing it cuts across various ethnic groups as well. And that's to tell you the flexibility in terms of the political realm within the UK at the moment, especially under the immediate past Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We've seen quite a number of minorities being represented there. We've seen a scenario here as well at this session ceremony. Abby?
Yes, and of course, like you mentioned, this reflects the fabric of the society in which, the diversity of it, and how far-reaching her impact. This is just what we see right now, but of course the entire UK is mourning this loss, and the rest of the world, let's not forget that.
That's true.
So it's a reign that spans a minor sect or group of personalities. We see a lot of notable dignitaries here, but they're paying their respects, but her influence pretty much surpasses that. One could argue that 3 in 4 Britons would not everyone loved her, but 3 in 4 of them probably did. That is very the equivalent of the lovers of chocolate.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of popularity there.
Indeed, and I was actually thinking when you mentioned the fact that people had mixed feelings about Reign and the roles that she played in some instances, and if you remember, there were some arguments about the relevance of the monarchy itself, if you remember, not so long ago,
yes.
Whereby maybe incidences in Europe and the trends in modern times begin to question how do we begin to service and, of course, maintain the monarchy. And when people start looking at the taxes that they have to pay in furnishing their lifestyle as well. I remember a few years ago that debate came to the fore, not formally, of course, but to a large extent, it piqued national consciousness, as it were, and
on the ceremonial nature.
The ceremonial nature might have made that seem quite irrelevant, but it still rings loudly in the minds of campaigners, some members of public, as it were.
Yeah.
But then again, irrespective of whatever feelings people might have had, you can't take away the fact that she was a rallying factor in the UK, despite its fractious historical stance. The issue of Northern Ireland, the Free Ireland state, Scotland as well, and many others in terms of keeping the union together.
Yeah.
And of course, how that has been sustained so far, I think the new king must have taken a cue, regardless of the issues at hand, and how to keep the union together. And of course, still a factor, and she's also a head of state in some Commonwealth countries as well.
True.
So you have to take into factors all of that as well, and managing all of that, should I say, assets, or to a large extent,
a lot of assets.
Yes, indeed.
Of course, this will be on the front burner. Of course, a lot of this dissension, and this is accumulated over the years, one could say. But for a reign of 70 years, one could say we've seen worse situations, even with shorter democratic dispensations.
True.
In comparison to a monarchy. So of course, he's going to be stepping into very, very large shoes, and he definitely has got his work cut out for him. But this could also signal a new lens, entirely new vision and approach towards how this is going to be reorganized. And of course, unifying the state and seeing what more the monarchy could entail.
Yeah. And of course, the fact that the monarchy itself is still largely ceremonial, you can't take away the fact that the Queen, to a large extent, has tried to not to dabble too much into the country's politics. But of course, there are concerns that maybe that might not be the case with the new king, as he often tries to get in touch with, ministers, members of parliament, just to gauge the mood. Gauge the mood of the country, and because he's also listening, he's watching, the politics unfold and how things are. And it'll be interesting. The UK going through so much transformation. We've had 4 prime ministers in like 6 years, and you tend to wonder, there are issues. Are they getting things right? The current party, the Tories and all that. So, and I wonder how many more will have to formally go to meet the king now in such a short period to tender they're being recognized as new prime ministers, as it were. And yes, of course, we've seen some Irish presence there. I believe that's one of the Irish leaders. All the regions well represented there. Wales, Scotland. As well. And of course, those leaders there have also given their tributes to her legacy. And of course,
Of course, what a monumental occasion for King Charles III as well. At 73, this is an age in which you were ascending the throne.
Well, you
How
can say
remarkable is that?
it's worth the wait.
It absolutely is
It's
worth the wait,
wait
especially when your
because-
mother is involved.
Yes. So I guess she must have been giving him some cues as to, okay, this
Yes.
is how you go about it. And of course, he is.
And I'm sure he's also observed.
Yeah, he has also
had the
learned
benefit of
from his
that.
own past mistakes as well, and
Yes.
his conduct as well. It will reflect, there's a sense of burden on your shoulders that air of responsibility has to be taken to a notch higher than when you were the prince. So to a large extent, much is expected from the new king. He has to give direction. And here we can just about make out his entrance into the chamber.
Business for part 2 of the Council. Your Majesty, to make your declaration.
My lords, ladies and gentlemen, it is my most sorrowful duty to announce to you the death of my beloved mother, the Queen. I know how deeply you, the entire nation, and I think I may say the whole world, sympathize with me in the irreparable loss we've all suffered. It is the greatest consolation to me to know of the sympathy expressed by so many to my sister and brothers, and that such overwhelming affection and support should be extended to our whole family in our loss. To all of us as a family, as to this kingdom and the wider family of nations of which it is a part, my mother gave an example of lifelong love and of selfless service. My mother's reign was unequaled in its duration, its dedication, and its devotion. Even as we grieve, we give thanks for this most faithful life. I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty which have now passed to me. In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set in upholding constitutional government and to seek the peace, harmony, and prosperity of the peoples of these islands and of the Commonwealth realms and territories throughout the world. In this purpose, I know that I shall be upheld by the affection and loyalty of the peoples whose sovereign I have been called upon to be, and that in the discharge of these duties, I will be guided by the counsel of their elected parliaments. In all this, I am profoundly encouraged by the constant support of my beloved wife. I take this opportunity to confirm my willingness and intention to continue the tradition of surrendering the hereditary revenues, including the Crown Estate, to my government for the benefit of all, in return for the sovereign grant, which supports my official duties as head of state and head of nation. And in carrying out the heavy task that has been laid upon me, and to which I now dedicate what remains to me of my life, I pray for the guidance and help of Almighty God.
I have with humble duty to crave your Majesty's permission for the publication of your gracious speech.
Approved.
Concerning the security of the Church of Scotland.
I understand that the law requires that I should, at my accession to the Crown, take and subscribe the oath relating to the security of the Church of Scotland. I am ready to do so at this first opportunity. I, Charles III, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of my other realms and territories, King, Defender of the Faith, do faithfully promise and swear that I shall inviolably maintain and preserve the settlement of the true Protestant religion as established by the laws made in Scotland in prosecution of the claim of right, and particularly by an act intituled An Act for Securing the Protestant Religion and Presbyterian Church Government, and by the acts passed in the Parliament of both kingdoms for union of the two kingdoms, together with the government, worship, discipline, rights and privileges of the Church of Scotland. So help me God.
I now invite your Majesty to subscribe both copies of the instrument, confirming the oath has been taken. I now invite the witnesses to His Majesty's oath to sign both copies of the instrument. Draft of an order in council authorising Your Majesty's declaration to be made public.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council for recording the oath relating to the security of the Church of Scotland, to be transmitted to the Court of Session, to be recorded in the books of Sederant, and afterwards lodged in the State Papers of Scotland and in the Council Register.
Approved.
Draft order in council determining the form of proclamation for proclaiming Your Majesty in the realms and in the British Overseas Territories.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising the Lord Chancellor to make use of the Great Seal for sealing all things whatsoever that pass the Great Seal, until another Great Seal be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising the Lord Privy Seal, if need be, to make use of the existing Privy Seal until another Privy Seal is prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Drafts of 3 orders in council authorising Your Majesty's principal Secretaries of State, the Lord Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, to use the existing seals until other seals be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising Your Majesty's Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to make use of the existing Great Seal of Northern Ireland until another seal be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising Your Majesty's First Minister of Scotland to make use of the Great Seal of Scotland until another Great Seal of Scotland be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising Your Majesty's First Minister of Wales to make use of the existing Welsh Seal until another Welsh Seal be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising the public seals authorising the respective public seals lately in use elsewhere than in the United Kingdom to be made use of until new seals be prepared and their use duly authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council confirming Your Majesty's wishes in relation to the Sovereign Grant Act 2011 to continue the tradition of surrendering the hereditary revenues, including the Crown Estate, to your government for the benefit of all, in return for the sovereign grant, which supports your official duties as head of state and head of nation.
Approved.
Drafts of 2 proclamations. 1. Appointing the day of Her late Majesty's state funeral as a bank holiday in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. 2. Appointing the day of Her late Majesty's state funeral as a bank holiday in Scotland. And of 2 orders in council directing the Lord Chancellor to affix the Great Seal to the proclamations.
Approved.
I now invite Your Majesty to sign both proclamations. And that, Your Majesty, concludes today's business for the Council.